everyone, and welcome back to the Wisdom by Harry YouTube channel. My name is Harry.
And I'm Mary. We're so excited to have you here today for another fascinating episode.
You know, today we are diving into something a little bit different, something that you specifically requested, and I'm excited to explore this with you.
Me too.
It's all about improving English speaking skills. And so you sent over this YouTube video that's got like 10 key secrets or something like that, and I skimmed through it, and it looks really good.
Yeah.
So I think by the end of this, you're going to have so many great tips to help you become a more confident and fluent English speaker.
I think what's really cool about this video is it really focuses on the practical side of things.
Yeah.
You know, it's not just about the theory of language learning. It's about actually getting you comfortable using English in your everyday life.
Right.
And I think that's where a lot of people, you know, maybe they've studied English for years, but they still feel hesitant to actually speak it.
Totally. And it's one thing to understand grammar rules and vocabulary, but being able to speak confidently and fluently, that's a whole other ballgame. So let's jump right into these secrets. The first one that the video highlights is the importance of, you guessed it, daily speaking practice.
Yeah.
And it sounds so obvious, right? But they really stress that even just short bursts of practice each day can make a huge difference.
It's like you're exercising a muscle.
Yeah.
You know, the more you use it, the stronger it becomes.
Right.
And speaking is a skill just like any other. So even if you can only squeeze in 5 or 10 minutes of speaking practice each day, it's going to add up over time.
Yeah. And they give some great examples of how to do this, even if you don't have someone to talk to. Like they suggest talking to yourself, describe your surroundings, narrate your day. I used to do this all the time when I was learning host speakers' target language. It felt so weird at first, but
I was going to say
it really helps.
It does feel strange in the beginning, but you get used to it.
Yeah, you do, and it's effective.
Exactly. And if talking to yourself isn't your thing, they also suggest practicing in front of a mirror that can help you build confidence, or recording yourself so you can track your progress.
That's a good one.
Yeah, or even retelling a story you read or summarizing something you watched. It's a great way to practice both comprehension and speaking at the same time.
Oh, that's a good point, because you're getting that double benefit.
Exactly.
You're understanding the content, and then you're practicing actually verbalizing it.
Yeah, and speaking of combining skills, the video also talks about listening to English conversations as being key.
Yes, this is where I thought it got really cool.
Yeah.
They actually compare learning a language to how babies do it.
Oh, interesting.
Right. You know, babies spend months just listening.
Right.
Before they ever say a word, they're completely immersed in the sounds of the language, and that's how they start to figure it all out.
That's so true. And I think adults can benefit from that kind of immersion too. You know, it's not just about understanding the words, but about absorbing the rhythm, the intonation, the pronunciation, all those things that make English sound natural.
Right, and you start to pick up on those little nuances that you might not get from just reading a textbook.
Exactly, like connected speech. You know, how words blend together in natural conversation, or all those little idioms and expressions that native speakers use.
Right. And I've actually noticed that when I spend a lot of time listening to English, like podcasts or audiobooks, I start to think in English more naturally.
It's like your brain is switching gears.
It really is.
Yeah.
It's amazing. And that leads perfectly into the third secret that the video talks about, which is actively trying to think in English.
Yeah.
And I know this one sounds super tough, like how do you even do that?
Right.
But the video gives some practical exercises to get you started.
Right.
And I think a lot of learners hit a wall here. You know, it's like you can understand English when you hear it, but then when you try to speak it, it's like your brain goes back to your native language.
Yeah, it's like there's a translation process happening.
Exactly, and that slows you down. So this whole idea of thinking in English is like you're cutting out that middleman.
Exactly. You're training your brain to process the language directly.
Right, and so what are some of those exercises that they recommend?
Well, they suggest things like mentally describing your surroundings throughout the day.
Oh, okay.
So you're kind of like narrating your own life in your head, you know, like I'm walking to the kitchen, I'm opening the fridge, I'm grabbing a bottle of water.
I see.
They also recommend doing rapid-fire object naming to boost your English recall.
Oh, interesting.
Just look around the room and try to name everything you see as fast as you can in English.
Oh, that's a good one.
It's like a little mental workout.
Yeah, it is.
And they even encourage you to have those inner monologues and self-questioning sessions in English. You know, like, what am I going to have for dinner tonight? Maybe I'll make pasta.
It's like giving your brain an English workout.
Exactly.
Okay, this is definitely going on my to-do list.
I think you'll be surprised how quickly you start to see results.
I'm going to try it.
Now, building on this idea of thinking in English, the video's next tip is about expanding your vocabulary.
Okay, so we're moving beyond just thinking to actually adding more words to our arsenal.
Exactly, but it's more than just memorizing lists of words.
Right.
The video stresses the importance of actually using new words in different situations.
Yeah.
To add nuance and personality to your speech.
It's like having a spice rack full of amazing flavors, but if you never use them, what's the point?
Exactly. And so they suggest reading to passively absorb vocabulary, keeping a vocabulary journal, where you write down definitions, example sentences, even pictures to help you remember.
Oh, that's a good idea.
Yeah, and of course using flashcards.
Classic flashcards.
But the biggest emphasis is on actually using those new words in conversations.
Right, because that's where it really matters.
Exactly. It's not enough to just recognize a word when you see it. You need to be able to recall it and use it naturally when you're speaking.
And that's how it becomes part of your active vocabulary.
Exactly. And while flashcards can be helpful, I've also found that setting a personal weekly vocabulary goal can be really motivating.
Oh, that's a good tip.
Maybe challenge yourself to learn 5 new words each week and try to use each one in a conversation at least once.
I love that. I'm totally stealing that idea because sometimes I get overwhelmed trying to learn like a million new words at once. But if I just focus on a few that I can actually use, that seems way more manageable.
Exactly. It's all about setting realistic goals and celebrating those small wins.
Okay, what's the next secret that they reveal?
This one might seem a little counterintuitive, but the video advocates for using simple sentences, especially when you're starting out.
Really, I always thought that to sound more fluent, you had to use like really complex sentences with lots of clauses and fancy grammar.
That's a common misconception. The video emphasizes that clarity is more important than complexity, especially when you're still building confidence.
Okay, that makes sense.
It's about getting your message across effectively without getting bogged down in complicated grammar.
Don't try to run a marathon before you can walk.
Exactly. And they even give some great examples showing how short, simple sentences can be just as impactful and sometimes even more elegant than long, convoluted ones.
Oh, interesting. So it's not about dumbing down your English. It's about being clear and concise.
Exactly. And the good news is, as you become more comfortable, you can gradually add more complexity to your sentences. It's a step-by-step process.
Okay, that's reassuring because I definitely don't want to sound like I'm talking to a 5-year-old.
Right. But it's about building a solid foundation and then expanding from there.
So starting simple is key. What comes after that?
Well, this is where the video introduces a technique called shadowing, and it's all about imitating native speakers to improve your pronunciation and fluency.
Okay, I'm intrigued. Tell me more about this shadowing thing.
So it involves listening to a native speaker and then repeating what they say immediately afterwards, trying to match their pronunciation rhythm and intonation as closely as possible.
Oh, interesting. So it's like you're trying to sync your voice with theirs.
Exactly. And it's surprisingly effective.
Really?
Think about it. You're essentially training your mouth and your brain to produce the sounds and rhythms of English more naturally.
That makes sense.
And the best part is you can do it with any audio you enjoy: podcasts, audiobooks, YouTube videos, anything with native speakers.
So it's like turning passive listening into active practice.
Exactly.
That's actually really cool. I'm definitely going to try that.
I think you'll be impressed with the results. But speaking of practice, the video's next tip is about finding a speaking partner to really take your conversation skills to the next level.
Okay, so we've been talking about practicing on our own listening, imitating, but now it's time to bring in another person.
Exactly. The video stresses that while practicing alone is great, there's no substitute for actually having conversations with someone.
Right, because that's where you really get to put your skills to the test.
Exactly. It pushes you to think on your feet, respond in real time, and adapt to different communication styles.
Plus, you get that immediate feedback, which is so valuable.
Absolutely. And honestly, it's just way more fun to learn with someone else.
I agree, and it can be really motivating to have someone to practice with and hold each other accountable.
They also highlight that having a speaking partner helps build confidence, especially in a low-pressure setting where you can laugh about mistakes and learn from each other.
Yeah, it takes the pressure off.
And don't worry about finding the perfect partner right away. It doesn't have to be a native speaker.
Ooh, that's good to know.
Just having someone to practice with regularly can make a huge difference.
So where can you find these magical speaking partners?
Well, the video suggests checking out language exchange platforms.
Oh, yeah.
There are tons of apps and websites where you can connect with people who are learning English and are also native speakers of your language.
It's like a win-win situation. You both get to practice and help each other out.
Exactly. You can also look for local meetups or online conversation clubs.
Okay.
There are even social media groups dedicated to connecting language learners.
That's a good reminder that there's a whole community of people out there who are going through the same thing.
Absolutely. You're not alone in this journey.
Okay, so we've got practicing alone, listening, finding a partner. What's next on the list?
The video's next tip is about taking imitation to the next level.
So it's not just about mimicking pronunciation anymore.
Right. This tip is about really absorbing how native speakers express themselves.
Okay, I like that.
It's about paying attention to those subtle things like speech patterns, contractions, informal language, how they use intonation to convey meaning and emotion, even cultural nuances that you might not find in textbooks.
So it's like picking someone whose English you admire and really paying attention to how they speak. It's almost like finding a role model for your English.
Exactly, but it's not about becoming a carbon copy of someone else.
Right.
It's about taking inspiration from their style and incorporating those elements into your own unique way of speaking.
I love that it's about finding your own voice within the English language.
Exactly.
Okay, that makes a lot of sense. What else does the video highlight?
This next tip is a game changer and something we've all struggled with at some point. The video encourages learners to not be afraid of making mistakes.
Oh, this is so important. I remember when I was first learning host speakers' target language, I was so terrified of making mistakes that I barely spoke at all.
It's a common fear, but the video flips the script on this. It encourages you to see mistakes not as failures, but as feedback.
Oh, that's good.
They're opportunities to learn and grow.
I think that's a really helpful way to look at it because mistakes are inevitable.
Yeah.
Right? Everyone makes them, even native speakers.
Exactly. And the video reminds us that mistakes actually show you where you need to focus your learning.
Right.
They're like signposts pointing you in the right direction.
I like that analogy.
So instead of getting discouraged by mistakes, we should embrace them as part of the learning process.
It's about shifting your mindset from fear to curiosity.
Exactly.
Instead of thinking, oh no, I made a mistake, it's about thinking, okay, what can I learn from this?
It's a much more positive and productive approach, wouldn't you say?
Absolutely. It takes the pressure off and allows you to enjoy the journey more.
Exactly.
What's the final secret the video shares?
Well, it might seem like a no-brainer, but the video stresses the importance of consistency and staying motivated.
Oh yeah.
It's about making English a regular part of your life and finding ways to keep yourself engaged in the learning process.
That's easier said than done, right? Especially when life gets busy or you hit a plateau in your learning.
The video acknowledges that motivation can ebb and flow, and it offers some practical strategies for staying on track.
Like what I'm always looking for ways to stay motivated.
They suggest setting small, achievable goals to give yourself a sense of progress.
Okay.
Right. And they also recommend reminding yourself why you're learning English in the first place.
Yes, having a clear purpose in mind can be so motivating. Like if you're learning English to travel, imagine yourself having conversations with locals in your destination country. Or if you're learning for work, visualize yourself confidently presenting in English at a meeting.
Those are great examples.
Yeah,
The video also highlights the importance of celebrating those small wins along the way.
I like that.
Did you master a new grammar point? Did you have a conversation with a native speaker and actually understand everything they said? Those are all reasons to celebrate.
I love that it's so easy to focus on what we haven't achieved yet, but it's important to acknowledge how far we've come.
Exactly. And they also emphasize the importance of making learning fun.
Yes.
You know, English doesn't have to be a chore. It can be something you integrate into activities you already enjoy.
I'm all about that.
So for example, imagine listening to your favorite English language music while reading the lyrics,
Oh yeah,
or watching a movie you love with subtitles to pick up new phrases.
I do that all the time.
You could even join an online community of English learners and make some new friends while you practice.
That's a great idea.
It's about finding those little ways to weave English into your life rather than forcing yourself to sit down and study for hours on end.
Right, it's about making it a natural part of your routine.
Exactly.
Okay, so we've covered a lot of ground here just in these first few tips. And I think it's really cool how they start with these foundational habits. You know, like daily practice listening, thinking in English, expanding your vocabulary. And then they build on that with these techniques like shadowing and finding the speaking partner.
Absolutely. It's like they're giving you a roadmap for gradually developing fluency in a holistic way.
Yeah, I like that. And they emphasize that it's not about being perfect, it's about making progress.
Right.
And even starting with just one small step today can make a difference.
Absolutely.
But speaking of taking things step by step, the video also delves into some specific techniques for pronunciation practice. Are you ready to dive into that?
Absolutely. Pronunciation is a crucial part of speaking confidently and being understood.
And it's something that a lot of learners struggle with, so let's see what tips this video has to offer.
Yeah.
Okay, so we've been talking about all these ways to practice pronunciation, like word stress, sentence stress, minimal pairs.
Right.
Even watching how native speakers move their mouths.
Uh-huh.
But the video goes beyond just the mechanics of pronunciation. And it also talks about some broader strategies for becoming a more confident and fluent English speaker.
Right, because pronunciation is just one piece of the puzzle.
Exactly.
You know, you can have perfect pronunciation, but if you're not comfortable using the language in different situations, it's not going to help you much.
Right, it's about putting it all together.
Exactly. And one of the things they emphasize is the importance of body language.
Oh, I love this. I'm a big believer in body language.
Me too. It's
Oh.
so important, and it's often overlooked in language learning.
Yeah, we tend to focus so much on the words, but our bodies are communicating just as much as our mouths.
Absolutely. And the video suggests paying attention to things like posture, making eye contact, using gestures to reinforce your message.
It's about using your whole body to communicate.
Exactly. And they also encourage learners to step outside their comfort zone and find opportunities to actually use their English in real-life situations.
This is huge because it's one thing to practice in the safety of your own home, but it's a whole other level to actually go out there and use the language with real people.
Right. And it can be scary, I know.
Yeah.
But it's the best way to build confidence and fluency.
So what are some examples of how we can do this?
Well, it could be anything from joining a conversation group
Okay.
to ordering food in English at a restaurant,
Uh-huh.
to striking up a chat with a stranger. You know, just little things to push yourself a little bit each day.
I love that. And each time you do, it gets a little bit easier.
Exactly. It's like a muscle. The more you use it, the stronger it becomes.
And the video also reminds us that it's okay to feel nervous.
Oh, absolutely. Everyone gets nervous when they're speaking a language. They're still learning.
Yeah, those butterflies in your stomach are totally normal.
It's a sign that you're challenging yourself, you're growing.
I like that way of looking at it.
So it's not about trying to eliminate those nerves completely.
Right.
It's about acknowledging them, taking a deep breath, and going for it.
I think that this is such a great reminder because sometimes we let those nerves hold us back, but really they're just a sign that we're on the right track. Before we wrap up this deep dive, I want to highlight one more point that really resonated with me. The video talked about finding your own voice in English.
Oh, that's such a beautiful concept.
And I think it's so important because sometimes when we're learning a language, we try to sound like someone else,
Right.
like a native speaker or a teacher we admire. But the video reminds us that fluency isn't about speaking perfectly. It's about expressing yourself authentically in the language.
Exactly. And that's where the real magic happens, when you start to feel comfortable enough to let your personality shine through.
Yes, it's about embracing your own unique style of communication and using English as a tool to connect with the world around you.
I love that.
Okay, so to sum it all up, what are some key takeaways for our listener on their English-speaking journey?
First and foremost, remember that it's a journey, not a destination. There will be ups and downs, moments of fluency and moments of frustration. But the key is to enjoy the process, celebrate those small wins, and never give up on your goal.
I agree. And don't be afraid to ask for help or support along the way. There's so many resources available, online platforms, local communities, even just a friend who's also learning.
And remember, there's no one-size-fits-all approach to language learning. Be open to experimenting with different techniques and find what works best for you.
Most importantly, have fun.
Yes.
English is a rich and fascinating language, and the more you enjoy the process, the more motivated you'll be to keep going.
That's a fantastic point.
As a final thought, I encourage our listener to think about one small action they can take right now.
Today,
Yes, today, to move closer to their goal.
it could be anything from practicing a few minimal pairs
Uh-huh.
to having a short conversation in English to
Oh.
just listening to an English language podcast. Every step counts.
And remember, fluency is within your reach. Keep practicing, keep learning, and keep believing in yourself.
You've got this.
Thanks for joining us on this deep dive into the world of English speaking. We'll catch you next time. Happy speaking. So where do we even begin with pronunciation? It can feel so overwhelming.
Yeah, it can be a lot to take in, but the video breaks it down into some really manageable chunks.
Yeah.
One of the first things they emphasize is that pronunciation isn't just about individual sounds.
Oh, right.
It's also about the rhythm and intonation of the language.
Well, that makes sense, like how your voice rises and falls when you speak.
Exactly, and the video suggests paying attention to two key things: word stress and sentence stress.
Okay, I've heard of those, but remind me what they are again.
Sure, so word stress is about emphasizing certain syllables within a word,
Okay.
while sentence stress is about emphasizing certain words within a sentence.
I see. So it's like giving different parts of the word or sentence more emphasis.
Exactly, and it can really change the meaning of what you're saying.
Okay, I can see how that would make a difference in how natural you sound.
And they even recommend recording yourself speaking and listening back to identify areas where you might need to focus your practice.
Oh, that's a good idea.
It can be a little cringy at first, but it's a super helpful way to become more aware of your own speech patterns.
That's a really practical tip. I'm going to try recording myself this week and see what I noticed. What other techniques do they suggest for pronunciation?
Well, they recommend something called minimal pairs practice, which focuses on those tricky sounds that are very similar, like ship and sheep or rice and lice.
Oh, yeah, those can be tough. It's easy to mix them up.
Exactly. And minimal pairs practice helps train your ear and your tongue to differentiate between those subtle sound differences. You can find lists of minimal pairs online, or there are even specialized pronunciation apps that can help you practice.
So it's all about really fine-tuning your ear and being able to hear those subtle distinctions. What else do they recommend?
This next tip is really interesting. The video encourages learners to pay attention to the mouth movements of native speakers.
Wait, so you mean like actually watching how people move their mouths when they speak?
Exactly. It might sound a little strange, but seeing how native speakers physically form those sounds can give you valuable visual cues for your own pronunciation.
It's almost like your mouth is learning by watching.
Right, and they even suggest practicing in front of a mirror so you can see your own mouth movements and compare them to what you see native speakers doing. It's such a simple technique, but it can make a big difference.
I'm definitely going to try that. It's amazing how many different ways there are to practice pronunciation.
And, the video goes beyond just pronunciation, though it also offers some broader strategies for becoming a more confident and fluent English speaker, for example. They talk about the importance of body language.
Oh, I love this. It's so true that communication is more than just words.
They suggest paying attention to things like posture, making eye contact, and using gestures to reinforce your message.
Yeah, those nonverbal cues can have a huge impact on how you come across as a speaker.
Exactly. It's about using your whole body to communicate.
Right. And they also encourage learners to step outside their comfort zone and find opportunities to actually use their English in real-life situations.
Yeah, that's key. It can be scary to put yourself out there, but it's the best way to build confidence and fluency.
Whether it's joining a conversation group, ordering food in English at a restaurant, or just striking up a chat with a stranger, each interaction helps you grow as a speaker.
And it gets easier each time you do it.
And the video also reminds us that it's okay to feel nervous.
Oh, absolutely. Everyone gets those butterflies in their stomach when they're speaking a language. They're still learning.
It's normal to feel a little anxious, but the key is to not let those nerves hold you back.
Exactly. It's about acknowledging those nerves, taking a deep breath, and going for it.
So true. The more you do it, the less scary it becomes. Before we wrap up this deep dive, I want to highlight one more point that really resonated with me. The video talked about finding your own voice in English.
Oh, that's such a beautiful concept.
And I think it's so important because sometimes when we're learning a language, we try to sound like someone else,
Right.
like a native speaker or a teacher we admire. But the video reminds us that fluency isn't about speaking perfectly. It's about expressing yourself authentically in the language.
Exactly. And that's where the real magic happens, when you start to feel comfortable enough to let your personality shine through.
Yes, it's about embracing your own unique style of communication and using English as a tool to connect with the world around you.
I love that.
So to sum it all up, what are some key takeaways for our listener on their English-speaking journey?
First and foremost, remember that it's a journey, not a destination. There will be ups and downs, moments of fluency and moments of frustration, but the key is to enjoy the process. Celebrate those small wins and never give up on your goal.
And don't be afraid to ask for help or support along the way. There are so many resources available, online platforms, local communities, even just a friend who's also learning.
And remember, there's no one-size-fits-all approach to language learning. Be open to experimenting with different techniques and find what works best for you.
Most importantly, have fun, Wage. English is a rich and fascinating language, and the more you enjoy the process, the more motivated you'll be to keep going.
That's a fantastic point as a final thought. I encourage our listener to think about one small action they can take right now to move closer to their goal.
Whether it's practicing a few minimal pairs, having a short conversation in English, or just listening to an English language podcast, every step counts.
Remember, fluency is within your reach. Keep practicing, keep learning, and keep believing in yourself. You've got this.
Thanks for joining us on this deep dive into the world of English speaking. We'll catch you next time. Happy speaking.